we have another legend coming on stage. Sindhu's spoken about all the sort of, her journey in comedy. But there are women who came before Sindhu, who came before me, and they had to fight a lot harder. And to honor Sindhu V as our change maker today, I want to welcome on stage legend Meera Syal.
Amazing.
Can we have a big, 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 big round of applause? Hello and welcome. And 1 second, may I have the award for Sindhu on stage, please? Okay, so this is what we do at We the Women. It's an intergenerational conversation because women who came before us made it possible for women today to be who they are, and we've got to open the door for women who come after us. May I please ask Meera Syal to present to Sindhu V the Changemaker of the Year award. Big round of applause, guys. Come on, show them some love. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. But can you leave the mic? Oh, she has a mic. Okay. So, Meera, before we start, can we please welcome the amazing Meera Syal? You know what? That's not loud enough for me. She's amazing. I mean, there would be no sort of name that you would take when you think of women or men in entertainment, in the movies, in television. Before Meera Syal, goodness gracious me, the Kumars at number 42.
Yeah.
Anita and me, so much.
Thank you.
So much to talk about.
So much.
Thank you for being part of this.
It's a pleasure.
I am an absolute fan, and so thank you for doing this.
Oh, well, I can fangirl you too.
Oh, thank
we can
you.
do it. We can have a
Thank
mutual
you.
session.
Thank you. Talk a little bit about how tough it was, because I think that intergenerational sort of moment that we just saw on stage is really important.
Yeah.
And I think people forget as more and more doors open for men and women of color, but in particularly women. We forget sometimes the battles that had to be fought for all of us to be in this moment. So take us back to when it all started for you and how tough it was.
Well, I don't know if there are many people of my generation in the audience. I'm sure
Many
there
of us are
a few.
there. Yes.
So really, I was born in 1961. So I grew up in the sort of formative years were in the 60s and 70s. My parents came over from India in 1959. So I was one of the first generation born and brought up here, I guess. So we were the little bridges. We were the people that were shapeshifters, you know, very Indian inside the house, very English outside the house, bringing the culture into the house, diffusing it, forming a new culture as we went out. So in that sense, it was very creative. However, we were invisible in terms of representation. We all used to play this game when I was little, which was quick, there's a brown person on the telly. And everyone would just run because anyone that looked vaguely like us was such a point of contact. Unfortunately, sometimes it happened to be a white person blacked up, which was a bit disappointing. That did happen too. But in terms of representation, when I was growing up as a little kid in the 60s and 70s, I couldn't see anyone that looked like me on the television, certainly not on stage, not in music. Our culture was separate. It was Bollywood movies. It was the Punjabi folk songs or the ghazals my father would sing in our musical evenings, but there was no crossover. Now, for my parents, that didn't matter so much because they had their whole rich heritage. But for kids like me that felt British and Indian and realized...
It was confusing and isolating?
Yeah, isolating, but also the invisibility of it, because it really is true. If you don't see yourself out there, you feel invisible, you feel unrepresented. You think, am I really here? So I think that's why I started writing, really, and where this desire to write and perform came from. Not that I had in my head that I wanted to be famous, but I thought I have to record our lives. because if I don't, how will people know we're here? How will they hear all these stories that I hear every day from my aunties and my uncles and my parents?
Yeah.
How will they know? We will be forgotten history, and we are part of history. We are part of Britain. We deserve to have those stories told.
Amazing. Now, you said you didn't see people like you on the telly, but there's also another problem that when we do see people like us on the telly, we see absolutely stereotypical versions of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, well, if anyone can get hold of archival material of comedy programs in the 70s, there is a program called It Can Only Happen in the 70s, and it's fascinating to watch. And what they do is they play clips from 70s television to millennials, and it's really worth watching their faces because they will see the sexism, the racism, every single ism, their jaws drop, and they go, really, this passed for mainstream television? But it did. I mean, the black and white minstrel show was still on television when I was a kid. It didn't go off the air till the late 1970s, I think. So that gives you a sense of what the prevailing culture was. And yes, of course, if an Indian did appear, generally they did the head waggle and they, you know, it was all of that.
Or the accent, the fun made of the accent.
Absolutely. On the other hand, I can see that it was television grasping to acknowledge a new community that was in their country. The problem is when those programs are written by an outsider, by someone that isn't part of the community, of course it's going to be a stereotype. That changed when we started owning our own narrative, when we wrote the roles. And then you can do them with truth and nuance. If somebody else is writing them, of course they're going to jump to stereotype because it's based on ignorance. They have no knowledge, actually, insider knowledge.
How different is it today?
Oh, it is different. I mean, it doesn't feel it sometimes when you're in the middle of it and you think, why is progress so slow? I still think we have a long way to go in representation. In the theatre, for example, I think we're still battling to be seen as mainstream. Very few West End shows with brown faces ever really make it yet. But it's only when you look backwards and you go, okay, if you put those programs next to what we're doing now, of course there's been change. It will be very sad if there hadn't been, because there were 2 generations on and there's so many talented people. I think you have to accept that you're always going to have to fight your corner, though. You have to be vigilant. You know, you can never be complacent.
What was the toughest thing in your journey to be the Meera Syal that we know and love?
God, I sound like an ancient building.
No, it's not. It's not in the past. It's not in the past. It's an ongoing journey. But and I'm sure it still has moments of really tough things. I don't think we live in a perfectly equal world. I don't think we see our stories in the way that we would tell them
Still
about
not.
ourselves. And then you have a hyphenated identity, as you said. You know, you have Britain in you and you have India in you, and it's all a khichdi, as it were. Right. So what has been the loneliest, the toughest, the most painful part of this journey, or is it, ongoing?
I think it's still trying to get the stories on that you want to be told in the way you want to tell them.
Yeah.
I am really fed up of seeing the same old tropes.
Yeah.
I think
cliches.
We are kind of stuck a little bit. People love to see us in a wedding film. God, they love a wedding film. Any chance for they'll take it, which is great. And we all love weddings. But I feel like sometimes we're stuck in this trope of Indians can only be culture clash funny, and there's arranged marriage and there's love marriage, and who they're going to put. We're so much more than that.
Yeah.
Have those stories, but can we also have the other deeper, more layered stuff?
Yeah.
Can we have the stories where we're just in there and our race isn't a
like
part
regular
of it?
people?
Yeah.
And not the sort of set piece brown character.
Absolutely. But actually, can we have us telling the stories that other people seem to want to tell about us all the time?
Yeah.
That's what feels frustrating.
Absolutely. I'm going to take a couple of questions. So if you have questions, do raise your hand, and the mic is there, but you've got to show me where you are so I can actually find you. I'm seeing a hand go up there. Is that, okay. Think of your questions. Yeah. Come to the mic and let me keep talking to Meera in the meantime. You grew up in a mining village.
I did. Yeah.
Can you talk about what that was like? And, being the daughter of immigrant parents in a mining village in England back in the day when it wasn't nobody would have forecast that, one day Rishi Sunak could be the Prime Minister of UK. right?
Right.
What were those years like?
Well, on the one hand, of course, we were the only people of color that I think all of those villagers had ever met. So
Yeah.
we were very stuck out like a sore thumb. This was tiny little community in the middle of the countryside. And I ended up there. Well, my parents ended up there because my mother came from Punjab and she
Mhm.
grew up in a village. And she was so homesick, as you can imagine. And she said, the only thing that is going to make me like this bloody country is if we have some green fields around me. It's
Yeah.
the only way I can
Yeah.
cope. So when this little mining cottage came up,
Yeah.
we grabbed it. And of course, you know, all of our Indian friends were going, what's the matter with you?
Yeah.
Well, you want to buy a house where you have to go outside to do your toilet. What's the matter with you? At least have a bathroom.
Yeah.
We didn't have a bathroom.
Really?
No. We had an outside toilet.
You mean you actually did not have
Did not have a
a
bath?
loo in the house?
No. We didn't have a loo in the house. Does anyone else grow up like that? I did. Hello. Hello. Yeah, it wasn't that unusual. in the
Did you
60s.
grow up like that? Yeah. In the second, you want to stand up and just reach the mic? I can't see the mics because of the light, but if you can reach the mic, that would be great. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sampada, and I grew up in Vishakhapatnam with my aunt. So in the house, there used to be a toilet, but then there was also a separate section for the toilets in the backyard.
Right.
So yeah, that's how I grew up.
Right, but you grew up in India.
Yeah, but then there were toilets in the house and also outside.
Yes.
So
But
I
there's
knew that
someone here,
system.
anyone here who grew up here with that? Yeah, could you come to the mic? That would be great.
Can't believe we're having a big discussion
I know,
about
I can't
toilets.
believe we're having a big discussion, but since the hands went up, you obviously touched a nerve
I
there.
touched a nerve.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sana Kardar, and my grandmother's house had a toilet like that, where there was no toilet inside, and where the sheds are usually now used to be the toilets.
Right. It was considered hygienic to have the
Yes.
toilet outside the house. So ours was at the back of the yard.
And was in Surrey.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Wow. Okay, this is really the last question I'm taking on toilets.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This isn't really, well, we could follow on with toilets, but I wanted to ask you, what's next? Because we miss you. Why? Where are you? That's all I want to know. Where are you?
Well, I've been doing quite a lot of work. It's just probably not because comedy is such a sort of accessible thing. I haven't done a comedy for a long time,
Yeah.
but I did a play called Tupperware of Ashes at the National Theatre last autumn, which was a play very dear to my heart about a middle-aged Indian matriarch who has early onset Alzheimer's, and it was completely sold out. Got an Olivier nomination. It was a huge hit. Thank you. So I always keep returning to theatre, but yeah, I've been in a number of sort of streamer series. What I haven't done is a mainstream comedy, and of course, those are the things that people remember most. But I'm very grateful to still be working. It's been a tough time in the industry, so.
Is it because the industry is changing so fast and also so much is about like, you know, what's your Instagram follow, you know, is that stuff real? Like,
to some extent it is,
Yeah.
yes. I've heard rumors that people cast according to Instagram followers. I
Really?
really hope that's not true because nobody will cast me in anything if that's the case. Yes, of course, the industry is changing. Of course, it's changing, and I've got the big three disadvantages. I'm old, I'm brown, and I'm a woman. So that's the Venn diagram of no work, isn't it? You know what I mean? That's where you're supposed to sit in a corner, become invisible, and go, "Hi, just leave me to die." I'm not going to do that. But yeah. So ageism, sexism, all of the isms, which is why I do keep creating my own work as much as I can. I've also written a memoir, which is coming out next year.
What is it called? Can we ask? No.
I'm not supposed to say.
Okay.
I do have a title, but it's
Okay.
not been announced yet. So
Fair
I'll be
enough.
working on that too.
We'll take a last question there.
Thanks. My name is Bharat. I had a question about your point around representation. So you mentioned that it wasn't the case that there were folks from our community represented in the time you were growing up or making a name for yourself. But then arguably, I think people would say that there's now over-representation of people from our community in different walks of life. Many of us are here today. I just don't know what to make of that. Should we be proud of that, be worried about the people right here who grudges that position in the first place? Thank you.
Okay, where do you think the overrepresentation is? I'd be interested to know.
Yeah.
Oh, if you were to listen to some of the noises that are coming out of sort of, if you like, some political voices in this country, you tend to think that they believe that, certain communities are now, really batting well above their weight. And I don't believe that. It's a question I'm asking you because of where you came from and what you're seeing today.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, those kind of remarks are what happens when we're all fighting for the same few crumbs. The industry has been really stretched over the last couple of years. A lot of people are not working. A lot of opportunities have been lost. That was a consequence of the pandemic and the writers' strike. If America coughs, we get a cold. I mean, we are still linked to the industry very much. So, of course, what happens is that's divide and rule. So people tend to, when they're not working themselves, when they're frustrated themselves, will tend to go, well, they've got too much of the cake. So I think you just have to take that in a measured way. I also think you have to be careful about window dressing. It's very easy for people to say, because there's there's a black receptionist at the desk and there's a brown woman showing you to your seat, that they're getting everywhere, they're taking over. Have a look at who's in the boardroom. Have a look at who's actually commissioning the programs, who's in control of budgets. You will find we're very much underrepresented there. There's a bottleneck. There's a lot of young talent. There's a lot of people that are put on trainee schemes. That's where you tend to see a lot of so-called glut. We need to, we're not being filtered to the top. So we have a way to go. I know it's frustrating to hear that, but it's why I always take the time to try and talk to people and go, you have to really understand how hard every one of those people that you think have muscled in have had to work to even get to this bit. And there is a glass ceiling and we haven't quite cracked it yet, not in every area.
Okay, last question, yes.
I just want to say thank you very much for paving the way for the next generation. And that comes from my daughter, who's an actor.
Oh.
She's currently acting in a play in Birmingham, Marriage Material.
Oh,
and she always says to
fantastic.
me, people like Meera Syal paved the way for us. Otherwise, I wouldn't be anywhere. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that really does have to be the last question. So go for it. Go for it.
Squeeze in. Hi, I'm Natasha. Hi, Meera. Hi, Barkha. Thank you very much.
Hi.
I saw you in a Tupperware of ashes. I happen to be a psychiatrist, and I thought it was a marvelous depiction of a subject that's very, very dear to my heart. My mother died of Alzheimer's a couple of years ago.
I'm sorry.
And as a psychiatrist, I think it's really important to fly the flag for mental health.
Yes.
It's very treatable. I wanted to speak up actually when Sindhu was here. She's very brave to have spoken about her own experience of postnatal mental health.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And I would like to see more from our Asian population about mental health, because it's treatable. You need to go and get help.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I totally agree. Thank you.
Can I just ask you in the end, this struggle, the tough years, then the good years, the love, it's all part of, as I said, this sort of happy mix and sometimes unhappy mix that's life.
Right.
If there's something that you've learned from just living, the enrichment of experience, and that you could share with young men and women who are starting out, what would that be?
Right. I think it's to remember it's a marathon and not a sprint. If I'm talking to specifically people that want to be creative, young self-employed creatives, you're already entering the one profession every Asian parent doesn't want you to do. So, and it goes against every immigrant instinct to enter a self-employed creative profession. There's no security, there's no pension, you don't know what you're doing next. You have to fight a lot of internal demons to even think you have a chance to enter this world. So be kind to yourself, find your tribe, get inspiration from other people that have fought before you, because there's always a pattern. It always feels like it's uphill. You always feel you take one step forward and two back, but actually all of these little drops eventually make an ocean, and I love the saying that you plant an acorn so your grandchildren can sit in the shade of the tree. You might not always see the results of everything you want, but know that your contribution is changing things slowly.
All I want to say is so many women and men of this generation wouldn't be here if Meera wasn't there.
That's not true.
It is true. It is absolutely true. Let's hear it for Meera Syal.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. And if you want to stand, you can, guys. Let's stand. And while you're standing, we can welcome on the stage a very special next speaker, business leader, Priya Agarwal Hebar, who's going to share a very interesting journey of being someone who loves music to now being one of the rare women in the management of mining. First, put your hands together to welcome Priya on stage. Let's hear it for Priya.